on an arm. It's on an arm that reaches from my desk, and I also have a split screen or whatever they call it in front of it. So that's what you see. Is somebody said, "What's the rear view mirror for?" It isn't. It's a screen in front of your microphone that makes S's not so S and pops not so popish. And so it's you'll notice on when you watch TV and they've got a microphone, a lot of times it'll have some kind of a cover over it, a fur cover. Sometimes it'll have one of those screens on it. And that's what that does.
Stop you from hissing.
Yeah,
I see Stan is on and live.
Dan, are you on and live?
Yep.
I am, yes.
Okay.
I had trouble again being able to see and hear you, but not have full control. I hit Control Alt Delete and it came back. So I don't explain it.
Okay, well, that's because you minimized it or you went off screen and it was a small window. Anyway, either way, I'll turn it over to you. The meeting is yours. I'm going to mute myself, and unless I can't help myself, I will be silent, and I'll turn it over to be between.
I'll just ask you to relay questions like you did for Bill.
Okay.
Okay, I'll be glad to.
Welcome to the Central Florida Computer Society main meeting. We meet on the second Sunday of the month, and our guest speaker today is Mike Ungerman, also a past president of the Computer Society many years ago. And as Huey mentioned, he's become quite security aware and active. So he's going to be talking about browser security, Brave browser, and a number of issues in that area. So Mike, I'll turn it over to you. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Stan. And for those that don't have the stamina to stay with me for an hour, this is being recorded. And as Huey mentioned earlier, the recording will be up on the Central Florida Computer Society's YouTube playlist, as well as repeated on Huey's website. So if you're on our email list of the CFCS TechSig, you'll get the information. And if you're not, Huey's got the database for the registrations, and you should get your notice from him as well. I will start with just a little bit of the mechanics of the presentation today. For the very first time, I started using Windows workspaces, and my intent was to put the whole presentation into a virtual machine running on Windows 10. And as Murray pointed out in the chat, and as I found out, upgrading to the latest version of Windows 10 20H1 with all the changes nerfs VirtualBox. Everything from locking Windows 10 up, a virtual machine up, to graphics halts, to it just terrible. And I did verify that also on a Linux machine, which also had VirtualBox and ran Windows 10 just fine with no problems. And after it updated to all the latest upgrades, it too was nerfed. So whatever code went over to Windows 11 that caused problems with VirtualBox, which I believe was reported on the APCUG Wednesday workshop last week, it apparently also was put out on the Windows 20H1 update. But I'm going to share my screen. I'll just show you very quickly how this is going to work. So right now you are looking at my second monitor. And right now it just has some icons on it. And using the keyboard command of Control, Start, and an arrow, I can move to my next workspace. And the next workspace has my presentation in it. Then I can switch to the next workspace, which has my Brave browser with some of the sites that I plan to show. And then I can go to a third workspace, which seems like the first workspace again, except I don't have my Zoom client open, which is kind of nice. And then I can open up any of these browsers and show you some of the features that we're talking about in the different browsers. So this is the Central Florida Computer Society, and our main meeting presentation today is on internet browsers, settings, and security. Originally, we had talked about the Brave browser in our technical SIG. And a number of people that I correspond with on a regular basis, both on the Windows side and the Linux side, had said that the Brave browser has so many different settings, it's hard to know exactly what they're doing and why they do it. And I said to Stan, let me do a presentation for the Tech SIG, figuring I'd spend 15 or 20 minutes talking about Brave. One thing led to another, and Stan said he needed a speaker, and could I expand it into a main meeting presentation? And as I started to look at it, I realized that to get to this point, we really should take a quick look at the history of how browsers developed. What are the current, very popular and active browsers now? And just how much internet security comes resident in those browsers and how much really is required or should be add-ons to those browsers. And I discovered lots of things, including as late as last night, when I came on an interesting app from the EFF, Electronic Foundation, which can actually test browser fingerprints. So let's take a quick look at what's up. I've ventured to say everybody here uses an internet browser, or you wouldn't be on this meeting. It's just how much attention have you given to what browser you're using? Are you just using the default that came with your operating system? Were you unhappy with that browser and maybe decided to put Firefox or Chrome on it? Did you want some more security, and listening to Bob G's presentations, decided to put on the Avast security browser? Did you dig in and find some esoteric stuff, especially over on the Linux side? So there's a bunch of browsers out there, not just the historical progression, but what's out there, and the choices can be confusing. And many people will just say, nah, I'll just use what's there. I'm not that concerned about it. So I'm going to attempt to cover some of the background, some of what I've discovered in my research, and what I don't complete today, most likely in the live demonstrations. I won't get to anywhere near all the browsers that I've researched. My thought would be to carry this thread on in our Tech SIG, maybe taking 10 to 15 minutes segment at the Tech SIG and showing a different browser and what it can do. So a little bit of the history. Wikipedia is a very good source for all kinds of things technical, and they have a very good history on browsers. It says in 1990, the first browser was actually called the World Wide Web. And I wonder if Stan recalls, we took a trip out to the University of Central Florida. And if I remember correctly, we held either our main meeting or our Tech SIG out there, and they showed us something like the first web browser. Could have been one of those.
Actually, Mike, if I can interrupt, what they
Sure.
did, I remember going to that meeting, and it was in a big auditorium with a big screen, which was very unique at that time. And they did use Netscape, but they did say that Netscape is only available on the Apple operating system, and it will soon be available for Windows.
Okay, well, very good. So let's take a quick look at what Wikipedia has to do. So I'll switch workspaces, and hopefully everybody's workspaces or everybody's screen has shifted over. This is Wikipedia's history location on the browsers, and they are showing Mark Anderson, the lead developer of Mosaic and Navigator, and Nicola Pello and Tim Berners-Lee in 1992 as developers. And they are talking a little bit about 93 and 94, about the time that we got started in all of this. But if we take another look at, again, at Wikipedia, at their timeline, they have got a very good display. And you can actually just click on and get a very small snapshot. I know it's not very easy to see. I'm looking at my other screen to see if it's even popping up, and I don't see it. You should be seeing a little pop-up here for links. Anyone? You see
Yeah, we
that?
are.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, good. Yeah, my other monitor is a little behind what's going on right now. Okay, so you can see this is kind of a terminal text type browser back in 93. I never did see that, but they're saying that's the first recognizable one, and they went through all the different development of it until 94 when Mosaic came out. And as Huey said, we got a chance to see Netscape. And on the Netscape Navigator, each one of these browsers has its own page on Wikipedia if you ever decide to do the research. So here is a screenshot of what the early Netscape looked like. So it was graphical in nature and really rudimentary, but it could render HTML coded websites. And we'll go back. And we'll go back to the timeline. Okay, so they had mentioned links. They mentioned Mosaic, which became Netscape. And I didn't realize how far back Opera actually went.
I didn't either.
So Opera was available in November, according to this, of 1994.
Wow.
And I do remember, Stan, that I think you had brought it up at one of our meetings that you liked the look of Opera, and some of us took a look at it. I don't know if it was that far back, but it was considered an alternative. And we go from 94 through 95, and it really was only until August approximately of 95 that Microsoft came out with Internet Explorer, which now has terminated and is highly recommended not to be used except for possible compatibility with older systems that you or your business that you're in might have to connect to. I know for the longest time, my wife, who is a realtor, could not upgrade her browsers or use other browsers other than Internet Explorer to access the multi-listing system here in Orlando until a couple years ago. In 96, the Mac made Internet Explorer available for Mac OS. And that continued through 98. By then, Netscape was still with us. Opera was still with us. And the first indications that an actual standalone Mozilla browser was going to be coming. So it was based on the source code of Netscape. And this actually formed the foundation for what we came to be known as Firefox. We get into the 2000s, still pretty much linked Netscape, Opera, IE, Mac IE, and Mozilla. Notice that Mac dropped Internet Explorer in 2000. A browser called Chimera, now discontinued. It was an open source GUI-based web browser, primarily for the OS X operating system. And I know some of us played with OS X, not just on IBM branded computers, but actually played with them on Windows computers, although I don't recall ever using Chimera. And Mozilla branched out into the first beginnings of what eventually would be Firefox, and it was codenamed Phoenix. And this again was in 2002. Phoenix became Firebird, and that's in 2003. And it wasn't until middle 2003 that Safari actually was published for Apple computers. And once again, Stan, I think you were on the leading edge recommending that we all take a look at Maxon. I can't recall exactly when it was that you took a look at this, but I do remember you sending out an email to all of us or talking about it at one of our meetings saying that this, go ahead.
I do recall that as well, and I don't have any recollection of what the specific features were, but
And again, all these are links which can take you to the specific page if you have the interest on Wikipedia of seeing all the history of all these browsers. Okay, so we're now kind of 2004. We've got a suite of browsers that are pretty much standard. We're now, Mozilla's definitely calling Firefox Firefox. Maxon's still with us. It's the OS X browser is still there for anybody still running it. Opera is still there. Netscape was still hanging on. And amazingly enough, Lynx was still around for terminal-based systems. I don't ever remember Lunascape. This was a Japanese browser. It was based on the Gecko engine, but it also brought in some other engines. So it says it's common only to the Avant web browser, and then users could switch between layouts. I never did look at that one. And go ahead. Thought I heard something. Okay. Mozilla kind of expanded to SeaMonkey. And SeaMonkey was one of the first consolidated sort of Outlook-like, where it was a browser. It would do your email, it had your calendar, it had your planning. So it was a sort of an all-in-one type of application, still available now. And Donna A was a fan of this and brought it up in our Linux SIG, trying to see what she could bring over. And we did actually find a way to install it under Linux. So it's still around. Let's see, we go into the late 2007s, something called Netsurf. I don't remember this at all, but it had tab browsing, bookmarks, page thumbnailing, some of the more advanced features at the time. Now there was a break in Netscape, and essentially what happened is it was adopted by AOL, as if I remember correctly, and became part of the code of their browser. And we're now looking at Chrome coming in September of 2008. And I didn't realize that I thought it was here much earlier than that, but I guess most of us have played with Chrome for so long that trying to place a start date as to when it actually began is a little difficult. But it came out, it was originally for Windows, then it was available for Apple, then it was available for Linux and iOS and Android. And we take it down into the 2010s. And I don't see any brand new information here. Pretty much the same group. Camino goes away in 2012. No loss, I guess. Indication that OS X is no longer around us. And let's see, did we have, Netsurf I said was one that I wasn't aware of. Okay. And here is the beginning of Edge as Windows 10 came out. And it was Microsoft developed, and it was an alternative to Internet Explorer. They didn't really say don't use Internet Explorer at the time, but one has to wonder exactly what the thought process was among the engineers at Microsoft coming out with a new browser at that time. Perhaps they knew with the handwriting on the wall that they just weren't going to be able to keep up with some of the vulnerabilities of Internet Explorer, and they needed something that was brand new. And we pretty much go ahead through this. Edge is running in parallel now with Internet Explorer through 2017. And I think we are pretty much here until we get to the 2020s and to today. Now, they're still showing Internet Explorer being around, but it's really not supported and not recommended. And if you've got the latest updates to Windows 10 and all of the service packs, you can find it by drilling down through the program files, but it's highly recommended not to use it. And so Edge has taken over, and it's also, the code base has switched to Chromium. And Chromium is an open source project which Google did in fact develop Chrome from, but which Microsoft then decided to join with their software engineering staff and subscribe to the licenses necessary to put the Chromium code into their browser and still put their front end on it and call it Edge. Okay, we'll switch back. So that's a quick look at the historical timeline. Any questions on going?
Mike?
Yeah, go ahead.
Jolyn raised the point that the browser you're going to talk about extensively isn't on that list at all.
You're right, it's not. And that surprised me. If you actually search Brave on Wikipedia, it has quite a long page itself, but Wikipedia didn't put it into one of the major categories. So the percent share of usage for Brave is not high enough, apparently, to get on that table. I agree. It was, once again, Stan, I have to credit you with exposing me to Brave, which I resisted for a long time. But what interested me was some of the security features that I liked on it, which we'll take a look at. Okay, so just a quick summary of what's considered the default browsers today. And let me see if I can get these video things to go away. I'm going to I think it's, you probably don't see it, but I'm seeing it. Let me see if I can get it out here. I want to control /. Okay.
Mike,
Yep, go ahead.
one other thing to point out, the original Opera browser and the current Opera browser are not maintained in the same place anymore and
Correct.
controlled by the same people. Current one is behind the Great Wall of China. The other one was free and open in a Scandinavian country. So, and that to
Correct.
me bears a great big difference between the old and the new one.
And please don't get the wrong idea. I'm not recommending any
Oh, no,
specific
I know
browser
that.
today.
I know
So,
that.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, yes, I did look at Opera. One of the reasons I looked at Opera is they actually have a fork, which is good for gaming if you're going to use web-based games. They strip it down, they make it run faster, that type of thing. And especially for notebooks with very low resources.
There are lots of nice features in Opera,
Oh, yes.
including a VPN. My problem is with the fact that it's China.
Yeah, I don't want to route through China either, believe
Right.
me. No, thank you very much, Bob. Okay, so what comes by default? Essentially, if you have a computer that has Windows on it and it's an older version of Windows, the default browser was Internet Explorer and currently not recommended. And if you've got a new computer and it has Windows 10 on it and has all the latest updates, Edge will be the default browser as the replacement. And as I mentioned, it's Chromium based. I am not an Apple aficionado per se. So it's my understanding that Safari is the default browser on the Apple computer. I do not know the way ahead, And if anyone here is a Apple guru or expert and knows what Apple has plans for, if they do have plans to replace Safari, feel free to interject. My wife has been a member of AOL since the days that you could get 3.5-inch floppies or CDs mailed to you and put on your computer, and she still has an AOL address. And until recently, she was browsing the web using the default AOL browser, which at the time was based on Internet Explorer, but only recently last updated in 2006. And new AOL customers that set up new AOL accounts don't use an internal browser with AOL anymore unless they actually subscribe to what AOL calls AOL Gold. And one of my friends here locally still uses that. So for me, I sort of break the browsers then up into two families. And the first family then is Chromium-based. And by the way, on this presentation, all of the browsers that I talk about will have, let's see if this pops up, the hand, my mouse pointer should have changed to a hand, will have links. So when they're sent out, you can actually click and then go to the information on the individual browsers. So Chrome and Chromium are not the same. Keep in mind that Chromium is the original open source project to which Google then created their version of Chrome. And therefore, some people have actually come up with a browser called Ungoogled Chromium, in which they strip out all the features, telemetry, and options that might connect to Google unless you choose to do so. Now, I will mention, I found it interesting that if I did want to log into Google and only for certain tasks, and I didn't want to remain logged into Google when I went back to my browser of choice, which is Brave, if I used Ungoogled Chromium, which I have installed, and actually logged into Google, did whatever I needed to do, including check Gmail, which is only checked probably once a month, and do some things with YouTube and manage our Google groups, then when I closed it out, everything was deleted. And when I went back to my main browser, I found I was no longer logged in to Google, which has been one of the complaints recently. And I think it's even been in a Senate or a House hearing where they've asked for testimony about why Google is keeping you logged into their system, even though you may log out or close the Google product. But anyway, Ungoogled Chromium is available. It's available for Windows. It's available for Linux. It may even be available for Mac. I'm not sure. I haven't tried. Edge, as I said, is now a Chromium-based product. And then others in this category are Brave, Opera, the Avast Secure Browser, and Vivaldi. And I'm sure there are others. These are the ones that actually came to my attention. The second group of browsers are essentially Mozilla-based browsers. Very similar to the Chromium project, there was a Mozilla open source project. And as you saw, as I went through the history, we had a couple of browsers prior to the one that was actually designated Firefox that was developed on the open browser. And they were free and open source by the foundation, by the Mozilla Foundation, available for Windows, Mac, and Linux. And lately, there has been news that the Mozilla Foundation is going to be putting some censorship telemetry into Firefox if they haven't already. I can't confirm or deny that. It's just there have been concerns about privacy, especially censorship, and the the Mozilla Foundation building a database of search words and things along those lines that they might want to censor. And there are concerns about that. So last year, I started looking for alternatives to Firefox, keeping all the features of Firefox. And the first one I found was called Waterfox. And Waterfox, again, it's built on the open source Mozilla. They say it promotes greater security, removal of telemetry, removal of data collection, startup profiling, and also available for Windows, Mac, and Linux. Only recently, while over on Linux, in one of the forums, I found out about another fork of Firefox called Librewolf, and similar goals to Waterfox, and similar to Opera, the original founders of Waterfox basically sold out to a internet advertising agency. And they promised that they were going to keep all the protections and the rest of that, but people said, well, can you really trust them if their primary purpose is advertising? So Librewolf basically is a standalone open source and nobody behind it except the developers of Librewolf. And finally, the Tor browser, which is developed in support of what's called the Tor project. And the Tor project itself has many more goals than just private browsing. They're concerned about surveillance and browser fingerprinting and trackers and so on. And they have their own site, which you can take a look at if you would like to do so, independent of what we're doing now. So the privacy and security issues. We all use browsers as a window on the internet. And many vulnerabilities enter our computers via our browsers. Even if we have good antivirus, even if we have good anti-malware, even if we have extensions in our browsers to prevent viruses and malware, the human factor enters in. You know, it's the hand on the mouse and the eye on the screen. It's what you see that lures you in, the phishing attacks, the surveys that you get if you are a survey filler out on Facebook, the quizzes, all these things that you might be using a browser that you consider 100% safe, but then you go and you click on it. So you would hope that the protection in the browser might immediately recognize that you're going somewhere. Maybe you don't want to be there and give you a pop-up of some sort. So I've been searching for that. And that has led me to a number of interesting things. As I said, as late as last night, I came on one that works on what's called browser fingerprinting. Now, we get a lot of free stuff on the internet. And I don't want to denigrate Google in terms of what they provide for free, nor for that matter, Facebook for what they provide for free. But it is founded by big tech, and big tech is not basically altruistic. They're in the business of collecting data as much as they can legally, and there's been some legal challenges over the years. And therefore, many independent publishers of browsers have said, we want to break with big tech and we want to promote privacy, increased security, which can counter the data collection in whatever form it may be. I will take a quick look at the summary page on Wikipedia. And it looks like I popped to the wrong one. Yeah, I popped to the wrong one. Here we go. Hang on. Okay, and I'm gonna have to lower it because I have this display on my screen again. So Wikipedia has a very good page on browser security. They talk about exploits of browsers using JavaScript, cross-site scripting, which means you've got a script running, which you pick up at one site, and when you go to the next site, it's still running as well. Adobe Flash used to be resident in all our browsers and has been removed by just about all of them now. And security holes that get reported all the time with updates that are being made all the time. In fact, if I remember correctly, Google Chrome just came out recently. What was it, last week or the week before, Bob, where they came out with a major vulnerability and said, make sure you get the latest update. So browsers can be breached in one of more of the following ways. Malware, obviously modifying the browser's memory space, or the operating system running malware already when you go into the browser, and it's now a background process, and that then reads and modifying the browser memory space. The main browser executable can be hacked. So if you download a browser, like, for example, the Librewolf, which I looked at, I wanted to make sure that the source that I was getting it from had been a verified source. I was doing it from GitHub on Linux. So I made sure that the source, the executable, been checked and theoretically had not been hacked. And they even give you parity codes to double check that what you're downloading is the same. But a lot of times you'll be browsing, searching for something to download. And if you happen to see, oh, I'd like to check this browser out, and it's recommended on a site, and you click on it, you might be getting a browser that's code has already been modified. And some of the components, such as extensions, could have been. And as they say, the plugins. And browser network communications could be intercepted outside the machine as the browser communicates over the internet, even perhaps through a VPN. And your browser may not be aware of that, and you may think that you're on a safe site. So this again is a pretty extensive, a good article talking about plugins, Adobe Flash, which is pretty much gone now, talking about password security. I don't know too much about hardware browsers. I've not encountered them. Sometimes you can use a live CD. You can boot it up and run a version of Linux, for example, and then use the browser within it. I've done that only when I've been installing Linux. And then hardening the browsers themselves, as basically what I'm talking about today. Okay, go on. All right, the second part then is browser fingerprinting. I think we all know what cookies are. Cookies are little bits of code that now today, most sites you go to will ask you to accept them. And they enable the sites to function correctly in many cases. They will record your presence on that site. And if you go back to it, it'll recognize that you've been there. It may even, if you've already logged into the site, may not require you to log in again. Or if you've done two-factor authorization and you've said authorize this browser to not require two-factor authorization, it'll set a cookie on your computer. And that's been around for a long time. It's basically cookie control, and there are utilities. One of the best that I like is called CCleaner, which can clean out all of your temporary cache, which includes cookies. And of course, then you have to re-log in and revisit again. But I'm talking about in terms of fingerprinting, there's a list of characteristics that are unique to you as a user. For example, how much memory is on your computer? How many programs do you have installed? What fonts is your operating system using? In your Office 365, for example, have you added in fonts? How much memory do you have? What's the display resolution on your screen that you're accessing the browser with? there are hundreds of characteristics unique to your computer that a browser could access that data and then make that data available to the sites that you go to. If the sites you go to and contain tracking software, then those sites can put all the pieces together and form a unique picture of you and a fingerprint of your device. I will recognize some people don't care. I will recognize that some people say, I have nothing to hide, so the world can know all about me and where I live and how old I am and so on. But it may, in fact, cause you to be classified in a particular demographic, which could affect different things, whether they're governmental in nature, whether they're law enforcement enabled, whether they are actual malware enabled. And they can put together a picture and say, okay, that's Mike Ungerman. I know that's him because I see his browser fingerprint. So this, I'm kind of getting to the point of getting to Brave. When I investigated it, I found that Brave by nature contains fingerprint blocking and disguise. And actually, before going into Brave, I will cover what the Electronic Frontier Foundation, EFF, has done in order to help you see what your fingerprints actually are. And they have an app called Cover Your Tracks. And this talks about what fingerprints are and how it works, and then testing it in any browser if you will go to their link. So we'll take a quick look at that. And let's go to Cover Your Tracks. Assuming it's going to go there. There we go. Okay, this is the learning section. Cover Your Tracks, learn. And what it does is it explains how the tracker works. I just talked about cookies. I talked basically what a digital fingerprint is, and they define the differences and what you can do about it. So if this is something you're concerned about, this link is in the presentation and will be on a sheet of links. So let's actually go to Cover Your Tracks. I am now in Brave. And this is going to be an app that's built in, it's using JavaScript. And they are saying, the Electronic Frontier Foundation, they are saying, if you trust them, they're only going to collect anonymous data. They're going to see how much anonymous data can be collected, and then they're going to tell you whether your browser is actually vulnerable. So I'm going to test my browser. And JavaScript is running in order to do this. So if you actually have things blocked in your browser, this app might not even run, but in this case, I'm allowing it. Okay, so it says you've got strong protection against web tracking, although your software isn't checking for do not track policies. So that means I have not enabled the do not track function for certain sites. But Brave, as I have it currently set up, is blocking tracking ads. And as I've set it up, is blocking invisible trackers. And it is saying, your browser has a randomized fingerprint. Now, what does that really mean? We'll get into it with Brave when we take a look at it. But what Brave is saying is, we will build software in that, even though, for example, I have 32 gigabytes of RAM on this computer, decided I would build it as a gaming computer and put lots of RAM in it. And that is one of the characteristics of this computer that an invisible tracker could pull. Well, maybe this time that I'm running the test, it reports me as having 16 gigabytes of RAM. And the next time that I run the test, or the next time I start Brave, it reports it as having 8 gigabytes of RAM, and so on and so forth. Same thing with my display. It may report my display at different resolution. Same thing for my fonts. So for example, if I go down through the headers that are actually sent in the message traffic, it's saying, okay, this is a Mozilla 5 browser. Well, wait a minute. I'm not in a Mozilla browser. I'm in Brave, which is a Chrome browser. Although it's reporting that Chrome is the latest version. Okay. And I'm certainly not in Safari. So it's obfuscating, some of the data that's being sent out. And they're saying 1 in 28.68 have this value. Now, if I run this, say on Google Chrome, which is not installed on my system, and take it with the default settings, they might come up and say only 1 in 150,000 browsers have the configuration that they uncover. That means I'm fingerprinted, and Chrome then knows about me. So if you download this app or you go to their site, you don't have to download it, you just run it, and you run it on the browser that you're using every day, you're looking to see a very low value, 1 in X 28 is fine. I can be 1 in 28. I just don't want to be 1 in 100,000. Same thing with HTTP headers. Notice that my browser plugin details, they are randomized by first-party domain. This is what Brave is doing. It's randomizing the plugins. And that's why, in essence, that I defeated it. And again, they're saying, okay, only 1 in 9 browsers that go through this have this value. So that also tells me there aren't a lot of browsers out there doing this kind of randomization, but it's going to be very hard for them to fingerprint me. Okay, my time zone offset. I am definitely not, well, that is correct. Okay, I have actually seen it say that I had GMT time and I had 0, but they are correct in a 6-hour offset. Okay, time zone, yeah, it did pick that up. So this is not something that my browser has. They're actually exiting my browser and getting that information from my operating system. So again, this is telling me that there are some vulnerabilities, but then how many browsers are on the New York time zone? Therefore, I'm 1 in every 9 browsers that are out there. So it's not that bad. My screen size and screen size and color depth. Again, that's not something that the browser would normally get. Most of the browsers will set themselves up to work with your default resolution, whatever you're set up with. So it was able to pull that out from the settings and actually get the resolution of the screen that I'm currently on. So a little bit higher in terms of vulnerability, and one in 16. And now here's an interesting thing. I know I don't have all of these fonts installed. And when I've run this with the other browsers for the fonts that I do have installed, I've gotten different answers. So this is being kind of randomized as well. But let's see what they're saying here. Okay, so if these are truly my fonts, now I'm sort of, oh no, it's 47. Okay, I put the decimal place in the wrong place. So it's a higher number of computers will have this group of fonts installed on their computer. I do have cookies enabled, and almost every browser that's in their test database has cookies enabled. There's a super cookie. They're technically not cookies, but they store and retrieve unique identifiers. It looks to me like I'm in pretty good shape. I'm only 1 in 2.78 browsers have that. So this, without hitting every single detail, it gives you a pretty good indication of what my vulnerability is right now with the Brave browser. And just so that we can see what happens if I run another browser, I'm going to move this off the screen. And let's just take a standard Firefox without any specific settings. And I'm going to get to the cover your tracks from the other browser. Give me a second to get the link. Copy it, paste it. Let's see how Firefox does. Pretty much, I think I may have done some settings with this version of Firefox, but let's just see what they come up with.
Mike, this is Huey. While you're doing that, I just ran it on my computer using Chrome.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, some of the numbers you're showing, I'm even have lower numbers, except for with our data set, several 100,000 visitors tested. I'm one in 115,328 browsers have the same fingerprint as I do.
So that's saying then that you want a low number. With a very high
Right.
number, your browser's fingerprinted at this point. So if you
Yes.
go somewhere and the same tracking engine that they used is being used by the site you go, even if you've got third-party cookies turned off, and even if you're running antivirus and malware and so on, they're going to say, oh, okay, we've seen this browser before. And if they've got a name tied into it, then they say, oh, that's Huey Poplock. Okay, so.
But some of the other settings, as you were scrolling down, I was
Mhm.
scrolling with you, and mine were actually lower than yours. So
That's
I
good.
apparently have gone in and done some settings,
Good.
because mine says our tests indicate you have some protection against web tracking, but it has some gaps. And under blocking tracking ads, I have yes. Blocking invisible trackers, I have no. And then protecting you from fingerprinting, your browser has a nearly unique fingerprint,
Yep. Good.
just as you have on yours there.
And what you're seeing now on this Firefox that I just ran, it says I have strong protection, but it's saying I've got a unique fingerprint. Let's see if I can see some high numbers here. So we'll take a look. Scroll down, plugin details, time zone is correct. Screen size is correct. Still fairly low, fairly low, fairly low. Actually, some lower numbers going up on the what they call canvas fingerprint. Now it's interesting that this is actually randomized by Firefox. So Firefox has been putting in some resistance to fingerprinting. Let's see here. Okay, this one, 223,000. So let's see, a hash of a Webgl fingerprint. It's a JavaScript API for rendering interactive 2D and 3D graphics. So it's a hash. And its method is to use your browser to generate graphics, extracting data from how each pixel is rendered. So in this case, with this version of Firefox, the way I've got it set up, there's quite a few people. Or actually, no, I'm unique. So I'm one of 23,062. So that's a pretty high number. This one is vendor and render. Also graphics related. Okay, and oh, this is a good one. Let's see, web header to let the server know if you prefer not to be tracked. Okay, and I have actually probably turned it on then in the settings for Firefox. It said do not track. So there's a lot of people using do not track. Yeah, let's see, hardware specs, fairly low number. So Firefox is not that bad, at least in its configuration, but they can track me. Okay, I'm going to close the Firefox. Let's see, let me go back home and close Firefox and get to Brave, which is the subject of today's meeting. just real quick, go back to the presentation. Okay, so what I would like to do then, based on a number of different reasons, I did use Waterfox for about 1.5 years as my primary browser once I decided not to use Chrome. I've used Firefox first, then went to Waterfox. I found that that Brave seemed to have more features that I liked. So I really wanted to give it a try. And right now it is my standard browser. So first, a little bit about Brave. They say the best privacy online. Let's hope so. Now I may have to stop screen sharing and then start again with audio turned on because I don't think I clicked it. So let me go back to the main screen and let me stop screen sharing. Let me start sharing again. Yeah, share sound. I wish they would just tie sound in automatically when you share a screen.
I've asked for that for almost 2 years now.
Okay, so just a quick video.
What is a browser? A browser is your window to the internet. It's where you access your search engine, stream your favorite shows, read the news, connect with friends and family, and more. You trust your browser to be on your side, working to protect your privacy and security. Unfortunately, most browsers fail to protect you from big tech's efforts to collect and profit off your personal information. All this data collection runs your battery down while putting your privacy and security at risk. Brave is different. Brave provides the best privacy by default of any browser while keeping you more secure from hackers. And because Brave doesn't harvest your data, it's super fast and saves you hours of battery life. Brave puts you first. Yesterday was about big tech. Today is about you. Join the movement with Brave, the privacy browser.
Yeah, a little promotion. If you really want to dig into more of their corporate philosophy, there's a web summit. There is also another webinar that they were involved with. The whole Brave panel was involved. And there's a introducing Brave, which I think is what we just looked at. They talk about online privacy made simple. It should be simple, but I find that the settings, can be a little esoteric. You can, if you're setting it up, you can bring in your bookmarks, extensions, passwords, and so on. It also makes synchronizing if you have Brave on multiple computers. I have it on my Linux desktop computer, which is here in my office. I have it on my notebook, which I carry with me around the house or sit in the recliner. And they use standard English words, but it's a complete pattern of words. Like if you were typing the passphrase, now is the time for all good men to come to the aid of their country, maybe 3 or 4 times, but it's unique word patterns rather than hash characters. So it's complex enough that you can just look that you can be relatively certain that you have a unique sync code, but it's easy enough to read off of one computer screen and just type it on the other. So I have them all synchronized, and they all have the same bookmarks and so on. Independent search, Brave has its own search. I'm still checking it out. I have not done that. Brave says it has free video conferencing. I haven't looked at that yet. They've set up playlists for things that you may go to and get. I haven't looked at that. And they do have a news feed if you wish. I haven't looked at that yet. I'm still just using it as a browser. So in their features, I'm just going to scroll down to their full list. And again, all these links will be available if you wish to spend your time doing your own research. For Shields, they do their own ad blocking. Fingerprint prevention, you've seen some of it. Cookie control is a little bit more intensive than just turning on or off third-party cookies. Forcing HTTPS when you go to a non-HTTPS site, which is rare, but it will do upgrading. It has various levels of script blocking. Per site, if you wish, you can set shield settings. Sometimes you might want more. Say, for example, if you were going to a financial site, sometimes you might want less. And if you have a tendency to want to check the currency in Denmark by going to their exchange, you can do certain global shield sites. Brave Rewards is their own feature. So one would say, why in the world would I do this? In other words, I'm going on Brave because I don't want ads. But what Brave is saying is, guys, it does cost money to publish and to put these browsers out. And we're not doing all these things the other browsers are making their money on. So we will screen all of the advertisements that we think could be acceptable. And obviously advertisers are going to pay Brave to be on that list. And then we will screen their sites and make sure that they do not have malware or negative type data gathering and so on. So there is the possibility of having Brave Rewards. If I had Brave Rewards, I'd have an icon sitting right up here at the top of the browser showing me that there were Brave Rewards. I've disabled it. I just haven't felt necessary. I feel if I'm going to do anything, I'll donate to them. But at the moment I'm not doing it. And by the way, if there's any shields, if Brave shields have detected a site attempting to collect data that they blocked, it will put the number 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 up here just to alert me that that's happened. Okay, security, clear browsing data. It does have a password manager. I prefer to use my own. It does do form autofill. I prefer to do my own from my password manager. You can control the content in full screen presentation mode. You can send do not track, which apparently I don't have turned on. So because they've already told me that I don't have it turned on, so I'm going to be checking that. They do have a firewall application, which at the moment is a paid feature in iOS, but they do support iOS. Extensions and plugins. Brave does support Chrome extensions in the Chrome Web Store. I thought when I put some extensions in, like for example, I have my LastPass password manager here, and I have Print Friendly here, and I have DuckDuckGo's Privacy Essentials here. So all of those came from the Chrome extension store. My recall was I didn't sign into the Chrome store when I did it. I might have, because Donna A. and I were going over her Brave setup the other day, and we were unable to get some extensions without signing into Chrome. So it may need you to sign into Chrome and give up that little security. So that means Google now knows what you put in your browser. But once you've done that, the extension is running within the confines of Brave, and theoretically, those extensions can't send information out back to Google, theoretically. I don't know, we'll see. Let's see, they have their own search engine. I think I said I'm using DuckDuckGo. I will be taking a look at it. Have not played with playlists, but apparently you can do offline playlists from things that you are listening to, such as videos and audio. Save now, watch or listen later, and you don't have to be connected. So different things that they have. And let's see what else we got that we can check now. They do have a very good review of their fingerprinting. Again, I'll provide this link for you guys to take a look at and follow up if you wish to actually see what's behind it. And we have some of the settings in their master settings tables refer to things that I even don't understand what they are. So I did research them. I did find links for them. Even reading some of them, like IPFS, is supposed to be a new way of routing besides HTTPS, but I'm not sure exactly where it's used, but I wanted to have that information. So all of these links will be provided for those of you that wish to actually research that. So let's take a look. Let me just see if I had anything else on the screen here. Okay, so let's look at this at the demo. Since this is my Brave, all these settings have been set. And it's very similar to the settings that you will find on a Mozilla, or excuse me, on a Chrome browser, because they do use the Chrome base. So some of these things are fairly straightforward. Like I like to continue where I left off. And that's why when I started and opened the browser, I had all of my tabs up here. But for security, you might not want to have it always start. You might want to have a new tab page and have it blank. I chose default colors. They have their own web store for themes. I chose my home button. If you don't, it defaults to what the new tab page is, and the new tab page defaults to Brave's landing page, where you'll get a lot of promotional information on Brave. So I've made that my search engine, which is DuckDuckGo. I show bookmarks, which you can see here in my bookmark tray. I do allow autocomplete, but I don't interrogate externally to Brave to have that autocomplete filled in. So for example, I don't have it interrogate what the top sites are that people are searching for. I don't have it interrogate Brave suggested sites. I have hidden the Brave rewards button, which they have normally got on. I like to go to new bookmarks that I've selected, have them pop up on a new tab page. You can also have them pop up on the current one. I like to see the full URL. For example, I want to see that full URL, not an abbreviated form of it. I choose the medium font size, probably could have chosen a larger one for this presentation. Is everyone able to see the screen okay as far as font size? Anyone having problems seeing it? Okay, but I could make it larger. I can customize fonts. I really haven't customized fonts for a browser in a long time. If I were, I'd probably use Verdana, which seems to be more readable, but I'm not doing that. And let's see. You'll notice I do have print friendly as an extension, and Brave has its own speed reader. Haven't compared that. It would be interesting to see and see what information, if anything, I'm sending external to the browser if I do it. Okay, new tab shows my home page. My home page shows DuckDuckGo. So let's see what we are blocking: trackers and ads. These are the default settings. Most ads and most websites, not Brave private ads, but I haven't turned those on. Show the number of items blocked in the Shields icon. So since we've been using it right now, basically just going to Wikipedia and DuckDuckGo, there hasn't been anything that's come up on the Shields to show me. I have standardized tracking of ads and ad blocking. I can increase it to aggressive, and they will tell you if you make it aggressive, some sites may not work. I'm going to play with that a little bit more to see if I get a better score, and then see if the sites I go to fail to render. At the moment, I'm not blocking scripts. So I'm letting scripts that Brave thinks are safe, but almost every website you go to is going to be using JavaScript in some form. So again, if you were to block all scripts, you might not be able to render the sites you go to. Cookie blocking. At the moment, it's not blocking cookies from the direct sites that I go to. The very first time I went to Wikipedia, I got a pop-up at the bottom of the screen saying, we use cookies. Will you enable them for this visit? And I said, yes. I didn't see any problem letting Wikipedia know that I was coming. But you can also, some sites will maliciously have a cookie that then records the information and sends them to associated websites that are either paying them to do so or have been hacked and have some malicious code on them. So sometimes that's your cross site, but sometimes you may want to block all. I can't imagine disabling everything because I have not had a situation going to a site I wanted to go to where blocking the cookies failed to let me to actually get in. Go ahead, please.
I use Chrome, and I have Ad Blocker Plus, I believe is the name of it, enabled as an add-on or a helper. And a lot of websites I go to, Make Use Of is one in particular, that every time I go there, it puts up a thing saying, oh, you have an ad blocker. In order to see this, you have to turn your ad blocker off. I just hit the button. I say, okay, just for this page, refresh the page. And as soon as it does, I don't see that sign anymore. Is there something like that in Brave, or is it a little more difficult?
I will be honest with you, although I haven't gone to Make Use Of, which let's just see. Makeuseof.com. Let's see if, oh, and I did Mike instead of Make. Okay. Makeuseof.com. Let's see if see if they detect an ad blocker. Okay, so it looks like Braves and they've just picked up Brave shields, and I see tiny little number. There are 9 shields that Brave is blocking on Make Use Of.
Click on one of the articles.
Okay. There are now 10 shields.
And then scroll down. Well, you don't get that pop-up that I get. That's good.
So what's happening is it's their internal ad blocking is working, and they're not sending a signature back to the site so that the site thinks that you have an ad blocker and wants you to turn it off. And you can see I'm up to 10 right now. Now, is that bad? Yeah, I don't know. You know, I mean, at least it's letting me know that it's there. Wouldn't stop me from going to this site because it's been around for a long time. So I have no problems going there.
But every time I use, and I look at this website a lot because there's a lot of articles on Facebook that point to some of the articles. They're usually good articles, and I want to save them in my, I want to save them. And so when I start looking at the articles, that will pop up and I have to go back, refresh it, and then without the ad blocker on, just to look at that page.
Well, here's an exercise for you. Download and install Brave, take the defaults, don't do any custom settings, and open Facebook. Start with Facebook and log in. See how many shields pop up. Then find something similar that you want to go take a look at and land on that site. Try it both with Make Use Of and try it with some other site that you get off of Facebook. See if that number increments, because it could be a cross-site cookie and see if Brave blocks it. It'd just be, it'd be interesting to see how many that it actually does do. I'm relatively, I'm off of Facebook at the moment. That's another subject, but I'm relatively sure if I went to Facebook right now that I'd get a large number popping up there. Okay, so cookie blocking and fingerprint blocking. We've already talked about that. I'm going to play with strict just to see what happens. And I'm going to keep rerunning the EFF application as I do it. Okay, let's just say I'm disposed not to embrace big tech. So these were all on, okay, by default. So I have turned off Google login, I've turned off Facebook login, I've turned off Twitter login, and I've turned off LinkedIn login. Now, what does that mean? Does it mean I can't log into Facebook? No. What that means is if you go to a site and the site says, log in, please, and you've got a box with an email address, and below that, you got little icons. Use your Facebook to log in, use your Twitter account to log in, use your Google account to log in. What that's doing is tying those sites together with tracking information. You're much better using your own email to log into that site. But if you decide to do that, you can, or if you decide not to do that, you can turn this off. And that then, if you saw the Google login button and clicked on it, it would not function. And you'd say, yeah, okay, I turned that off. And I'll have to log in with my email address. Is it convenient to let Google log me into a third-party site? Of course it is. Is it convenient to allow Facebook to log me into a third-party site? Sure. What price am I paying for that? Question mark. I'm not going to answer it. I turned off autocomplete because this is actually sending cookies and searches from the address bar to my default search engine. Now, my default search engine, I think, is private, but I would still rather do the search than have it automatically send the information from the browser. Okay, Webrtc. This is one of those that I have absolutely no idea what Webrtc is. So it's a feature that lets you do things like make phone calls, video chat in your browser, connects directly to the people you're chatting with. It can reveal your IP address to them. An advanced option that lets you change the exact details. Most people shouldn't need to change the setting. So it has the right to enumerate all interfaces and bind them. Should only use the default root, public interfaces, and disable. I have it disabled. I believe. Let me just check here. Yeah. Well, no, I don't. I have it on default. So what do I have? My choices: public and private interfaces, default public interfaces, or disable. I haven't used it. I'll probably learn more and see whether I should have it on or not. You know why I have that off. Privacy preserving product analysis. It's anonymized info, helps Brave estimate your overall usage. I know it would help them. I just don't particularly want to communicate with them. And I think this defaults to on, and I've turned it off. Aha, I had turned this off. Guess what? In my latest update, Brave turned it on. Automatically send daily usage ping to Brave. It's private, it's anonymous, but Brave, you'll just have to live without my information. And crash reports, well, I'll send an email to their support. So if it crashes, it hasn't crashed yet, I'll get a screen capture and I'll email them. Okay, so I'm going to turn, well, maybe I can't. Yep. Okay, I got to turn it off and I have to relaunch. So I'll have to relaunch for that to go off. Okay, so these were all unique to Brave in many cases. This is pretty standard in a Chrome browser, clear browsing data. You can clear other site data. You can clear let's see, now this is the security setting. Okay, so safe browsings, I'm using standard protection, detects and warns about dangerous events when they happen. Always use secure connections. I have one reason for not having this turned on. I have a Synology disk station with an HTTP connection, which is on my local area network behind two firewalls, behind my router's firewall and behind my Synology firewall. So I have not turned this on, but in general, it's a good idea to only go to sites that use HTTPS. We could have a whole session on DNS, and I'm pretty sure it's been done in APCUG, and Bob may have a article on alternate DNSs. I use Cloudflare. I've researched them. I like them. I like what they do in my routing, and they keep me from going to poison sites. So I use Cloudflare.
I have the same setting.
And there are other ones out there. Quad 999 has been recommended. I'm not going to use Google, thank you. OpenDNS, I used to use before Cloudflare was out there, available publicly. And the one thing I like about OpenDNS is you can establish an account there. If you have multiple computers in your home with children, teens, senior citizens above yourself, if you want to keep them from going to different places by category, places they shouldn't be browsing for, OpenDNS lets you actually establish account settings and then apply it to your home network. And a good example of that is a number of years ago, I was the IT guy for my wife's real estate firm, and I took care of their local area network. They didn't have a server, it was just peer-to-peer. And I had learned about OpenDNS, and the broker of record was complaining about the amount of time people were spending, you know, playing games on their computers. They wanted me to remove solitaire, which there was a lot of people unhappy about that. But they were also browsing the web. Hunters were going to gun sites, and beautician, you know, some of the women were going to nail sites and other stuff. Anyway, they weren't doing real estate business. So we had a meeting. They said, hey, we're putting a screening function on. These computers here are for business. Do your personal browsing at home. And I put an OpenDNS account, and I locked out all kinds of categories, and they just couldn't get there. Many people brought their own notebooks in. But anyway, Cloudflare seems to do the job, and I leave it there. Okay, let's see if we gotten all the way down to web privacy. Oh, back. Okay, this has.
Mike, while you're looking,
Yep.
in the chat box, Paul said, I use Firefox and uBlock Origin as my ad blocker, but I also use Ghostery for the tracker blocking, although they claim to be an ad blocker as well. And I don't see any pop-ups or ad block complaints on the MUO or make use of website, just for your information. And then Murray asked, where is Brave? And somebody put in a link to the Brave website, which is brave.com.
Right.
And that's in the chat box.
Would you ask for the Ghostery URL in the chat box, please, so that we can capture that? Because that's one I hadn't heard of.
Okay, Paul, if you've got it handy, if not, I can look it up.
Okay, righty. How are we doing? Well, all right. There, needless to say, I could spend probably another half hour going through all of this. So I'll probably put everybody asleep. There are many, many, many settings in here. Most of them you can find directly from Brave's information with links, and you can find it directly from their homepage. And I will provide you with this list of all these URLs that have to do with Brave discussing their privacy features. Now, what does it do as far as a browser? Well, I have DuckDuckGo in as my search engine. When you get DuckDuckGo, it's going to have a lot of settings itself. You can go through those settings as well, which are fairly straightforward. They want your region. Right now, it's all regions, but you could put in the US. They want safe search, which I have as moderate. Normally, I have instant answers turned off. I don't want it to go out and search for answers. I do scroll infinitely. Yeah, let's see. Let's set that on. I have autocomplete because it's looking at history. I should have links and new tabs. I turn off advertisements. I turn off keyboard shortcuts because my fat fingers will hit it. I will set it to US information. I will let it render the best available. I turn off page break numbers. I turn off page break lines. I turn off the advertising that DuckDuckGo does with instructions, but some of you may wish to leave it on and go through that. I don't want their privacy newsletters. I don't want reminders. I don't want tips, and I don't want to improve it. And so I wind up with a screen that looks like that. Now, DuckDuckGo says to be fully protected, you want to use their privacy essentials. And what it does is it ensures an encrypted connection between your browser and their search engine. It also will follow trackers in your searches. It says it uses good privacy practices and no tracking. Come on back. Unprotected sites and report a broken site. So right now there are no, and this is just short-lived because I initiated this particular browser this morning, which is why this wasn't selected. So I will use DuckDuckGo for the moment instead of Google or Bing or some of the others, because I know that big tech search engines are gathering data, and that's how they make their money. Now, how DuckDuckGo makes their money without doing that, I don't know. I'll have to research that as well. But that's my search engine. So let's go back here.
Mike, does CCleaner clean up the crap for your browser?
Yes.
Okay. I wasn't sure because I'm not using it, so, and that was one of the questions in the
Yes.
chat.
CCleaner can be customized under settings and advanced settings. And you can customize it also they give you a table that includes your internet browsers. And then it also includes a number of programs that has temporary data as well. And I do like that.
I don't know whether Brave was in that list of browsers.
Okay, we're getting on towards an hour and a half, so I'm really not going to go into this other information, which I will probably carry forward into our TechSig. I will say that there is another start page besides DuckDuckGo, which is also for searching, called Start Page. I just became aware of it this week, and I want to compare it to DuckDuckGo and take a look at it. The biggest advantage they have is DuckDuckGo actually runs their own search engine. Start Page says they can keep the ability to access Google search, but their inquiries are sent anonymously and returned anonymously to Start Page's servers, and then sent back to you encrypted and also anonymous. So if that's the case, then I want to do some comparison searches for different things between DuckDuckGo and Start Page and see what I think about it. And we did already do that. Okay, so you've already seen Firebox. I've talked about Waterfox, Librewolf. I've talked about Tor. I haven't really opened them up and looked at them. I have ungoogled Chromium on this computer. I have Opera on here just for testing purposes, but I won't be using it. I do like Vivaldi as a sort of an all-in-one. because they combine a lot of the Outlook sort of things, calendar, email, and web browsing. I like the Avast secure browser. I have not yet run the susceptibility check from EFF on it. So I won't publicly go through what those are, but feel free to do it. Microsoft Edge, I will occasionally use only to access things that really want the resolution that Microsoft requires. It used to be Internet Explorer. I had to have Internet Explorer for certain things. Very rarely now do I need to use Edge because I can use one of the Chromium browsers. And as I mentioned, we meet the fourth Tuesday of the month in our tech SIG. And what I'm going to propose to Stan is a lot of the things I didn't get to do here. You know, it's like a 20-minute segment or a 10-minute segment on each one of them, and also take a look at some of these other browsers. So if you would like to join our technical SIG and get notices from it, I'm sure Huey will put that in his notes as to how to get a hold of our tech SIG. And let's go on. Whoops.
Mike, I have one question.
Yep.
When you do the fingerprint checking on the secure browser, would you put it into banking mode and then run that test? I'm curious.
Banking mode. In other words, go to a banking site.
No.
Oh, banking mode. Oh, yeah.
Banking mode.
Of the Avast browser. Okay.
Correct.
Okay. I will do that.
You should get nothing. It shouldn't see anything.
Well, let's see. All right. We've got time to do a quick demo. Here's Avast secure browser.
I don't know if you can demonstrate banking mode because that blocks you out from everything. So
It might even block us out from what we're doing now. Okay, so we'll take that out. Okay, is it in the settings?
yes,
Okay, and all settings or,
no, banking mode.
oh, here we go, new bank mode window. Okay.
Yep.
Hello. Oh,
We
there
are
we
not
go.
going to. We're not going to see it.
Okay, and I'm not, yeah, I can see you're not going to see it, right?
Right. And
Okay,
that's
so,
what I would like you to run the test on to see.
all right, so we will talk. I think I still have it on my clipboard. No. Yes, cover your tracks, EFF. Okay, I'm typing it in. Typing cover your tracks, test your browser. It says it's testing. 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 Our tests indicate blocking tracking ads, yes. Blocking invisible trackers, no. Protecting you from fingerprinting your browser as a unique fingerprint. Now, that's still not necessarily bad if what it's not blocking is randomized, and each time I run this test, it's different. So let's see what it's coming down and saying. No problem with headers. 1 in 28. Browser characteristics. It has got plugins, plugin Chrome, PDF viewer, portable document format, internal PDF viewer. So there's a whole bunch. There's probably about 60 browser plugins, and I haven't done that, but it's saying 1 in 7 browsers have this value. So that's not a problem, really. Time zone's okay. It's got my screen depth. Fingerprint metrics. It's got all my fonts. And it's 1 in 47. Are cookies enabled? Yes. 1 in 1. Super cookies. 1 in 2.78. So 1 in 3. Canvas fingerprinting. 1 in 85. So that's a few more. Webgl Fingerprint. Here's a big one. Okay, Webgl Fingerprint.
Before you read that,
Okay.
in answer to Bernard, he said he lost his screen. You didn't lose it. Mike is
Didn't lose it.
Yeah.
Mike is in a format that doesn't allow that to be shared,
Right.
but he's reading the results to you.
I've entered the matrix. Okay, so one in 19,236 for hash of a Webgl fingerprint. And it says, what is this? Webgl is a JavaScript API for rendering interactive 2D and 3D graphics. So I think I read that one off before. That's a fairly high one. Let's see what else I've got. Okay, this one's high also. Webgl vendor and renderer, Google Incorporated, for the AMD Radeon, which is my graphic card. It's a library that allows browsers to render 3D graphics. It is one in 11,541. So that's kind of high. Platform. Looks like everything else is fairly low. I'm just looking to see if anything else comes up with a high number. It looks like those are the ones. So it has to do with the graphics formatting that I'm there. All right, now let's see what happens if I close this. Okay, that went away and okay,
Yeah, we
we're
see
on,
your screen
yep,
again.
okay, and this one, okay, that can go away.
Okay, a
And-
couple of notes from the chat box. Let's see, is this one we covered? Paul, supposedly DuckDuckGo does not use user-directed advertising as Google Chrome and MS Edge do, but I never see any ads. Oh, God, that's one I already said.
Okay.
Sorry, I meant Google and Bing. And then, have you had any problems with accessing your financial services with Brave?
Yes and no. Some earlier versions of Brave, I had trouble logging in to Chase. And I'm going to say I started with Brave as my primary browser probably in June or July. And since then, I haven't had problems. Plus, I switched over from Waterfox because Waterfox could not get into Chase at all. Another problem I had was with the US Postal Service. I used their pack and ship app where you print your labels at home. And I could get all the way up to the payment screen. And then I couldn't get the pop-up to put in my credit card information. And what I had to do was copy the link where I was and open up Firefox and complete it. That has since improved and I don't have problems with that. On a related scale, Donna A had said to me that she had problems filling out forms with Brave, and she referenced Judy's form for one of the APCUG workshops. And we couldn't find one to try after we went through the process of setting up her settings. So I'm going to say 90% successful. It's very rare now that I have a problem with it, but people have reported some problems.
I've had that same problem using Chrome and my ad blocker, or just Chrome, and the pop-up to complete a transaction just wasn't there. And I did what you did. I copied the link. I opened up Firefox and went right to it and was able to complete the process.
Right.
One other item in the chat box, Dick Vogel said I had no problems using Brave to access my financial sites.
Good. Okay, so anybody want to go live and ask a question? Raise your hand.
Stop
So-
the sharing.
Oh, I see. All right, let me just see it then on the next page. Okay. All right, so I will stop sharing, assuming I can get to the screen to stop sharing. There we go. Okay, I see Donna has her hand up.
I've unmuted. Okay, my question was, I don't remember, do you use an additional ad blocker with Brave, or you just use the Brave settings for the blocker?
The latter.
Okay, thank you.
Tom Hirsch.
Hi, Mike. Thank you for this great presentation. I do free work for some charities, and that requires me to have my laptop computer at the charity so that I can upload files to my Google Drive to share with various organizations. And I use the Wi-Fi that's there. So I got private internet access, which is a subscription virtual private network. And I used that fine without any problems. But then within the last couple of months, 4 of my 5 computers will not let me access Google Drive using private internet access over Wi-Fi. One of them is allowing me to do that, but the other 4 are not. And I wonder if you have any idea if there's any other method I can use. And some of these web browsers do have a limited form of VPN built into them. And I wonder if that would have how secure that is, and if that might cause the same problems I'm having now.
Number one, every VPN is slightly different. A lot will depend if your VPN's turned on where it's popping out. So I'm going to assume you need to pop out at a server that's in the United States and not somewhere overseas.
Yeah, it is. I'm using the one in Florida. It's the one I'm using is it's called Private Internet Access, and it has a server in Florida. It's got one in Atlanta and various other places.
Okay.
But I'm using the one in Florida.
Have you tried a test with the private internet access VPN turned off, but still using the same browser? Does it work? Just trying to isolate it to whether it's a VPN problem or not.
Well, I don't think it's a VPN problem because I have another email account on Juno, and I have no problem accessing that and accessing other things, but I cannot access, when I try to access Google, I get to the screen where it says enter your Google identity, because I have one Google email address for the Jewish Genealogical Society, and I have another one which is my personal email address. And once I enter my email address, I can't get beyond that screen, to log in. And that's for Google Drive or Gmail. It just doesn't work for either one. And I've tried multiple web browsers, every web browser I've got on my computer, and none of them will get past that screen.
Have you tried Brave?
I have not tried Brave. I have Brave on some of my computers, but I've tried Edge, Firefox, Opera, Chrome, and they all hit the same roadblock.
It's interesting that Chrome would run into that problem. I'd say give Brave a try, and Brave does have a private mode. So you can go into the private mode and you can see then if that's any different from the standard mode. And then there's a setting to turn on the Tor routing, and Tor disperses your routing all over the place from server to server to server and then back again. And I can't vouch for the safety of that, but it's supposed to disperse it. And you might try that if you're just trying to get to a Google Drive and see with and without a VPN whether that would work. And then I did not show it here, but there's actually a Tor browser, and fairly easy to download and install, and use it only for testing until you see whether it works. And try to access it with a Tor browser with the Tor functions turned on, and see if that will access it.
Do you have any experience or knowledge about how safe or unsafe the VPNs of the browsers are, just using the browser VPN only?
I'm going to turn to Bob G on that.
Only one that's got the built-in VPN is Opera.
That's my primary browser, but I've just kind of been reluctant to try that because I've read that those VPNs in the browser are very limited and are risky.
The fact that you're using Opera to me is a risk
Yeah.
with or without a VPN. Because you're in China and you're subject to their rules and regulations and their data collection. And there isn't anything in China that isn't collected. Everything is collected. And you're passing it right along to China.
Yeah, I would definitely switch from Opera. I would say give Brave a try because it is a version of Chromium. So, you know, it may not be able to get through either if you can't get through with Chrome, because Chrome isn't going to block things like that. I personally favor Proton VPN. I pay for my version. I get what I pay for because I get better speeds and things like that. But they do have a basic version that is free, lower speeds and limited servers, but there is a server in Miami. And I would say go to protonvpn.com. We'll put it in the show notes. And just download. You don't have to use their email service if you don't want to. Just download their free VPN to try out the basic. Use it instead of the VPN that you are using now and see if you can get through. And if so, then it's your VPN that's causing the problem.
All right, thanks, Mike. Very,
Maybe
very helpful.
Opera too. Maybe Opera too. I don't know. Did we answer your question, Tom, or did we lose you?
Yes, that was very helpful information. Thank you.
Okay. Stephen Hall. Unmute.
Yeah, I've had trouble using Chrome to get to certain sites, sensitive sites. And even conferences where I wanted to join a conference. And one of the things, and I brought this up before and nobody seemed to know anything about it. There's something that Chrome has called the refer settings. And I'll just read to you what I was able to find. It says, HTTP refer is the only way by which third parties can know what website you're visiting. And there are many other tracking methods which are still efficient with this blocked. While you won't ever be able to block 100% of trackers, make sure you look at other guides to harden your defenses. And then it goes on to say, unlike Firefox, Chrome does not give you a configuration panel where you can change the refer policy. You need to install an add-on to do that. And you have to go to the Chrome Google Web Store to get refer control. Now, I don't know what the hell that is, but what I do is I just go to Edge because I have that browser. And when I use that, I don't have any trouble getting in. But Chrome does not allow me to go into certain sites.
And again, since Brave is a Chromium browser, you could try that and see if that works for you.
Well, if it's Chromium, well, that's right, because that is Edge. So maybe that would work.
But the point with Brave and the point with the other one, which I haven't demonstrated but mentioned, ungoogled Chromium, is they've taken out the core engines that are designed to do tracking that come with Chrome itself. So you will find some things that Brave will do that Chrome won't do because their tracking engines are interfering with the process.
Yeah, that might be the answer. So I'll give that a try. Thanks for an excellent presentation too.
Just to clarify,
Sure,
Chrome
please.
is also Chromium-based.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I have some problems with Chrome itself. Our Thursday show, Tech for Seniors Live, I am not able to see my picture when I join if I'm in Chrome. And it works like a charm if I'm using Edge. So I know that on Thursday, my default browser or my browser for Thursday has to be Edge. It can't be Chrome because I can't join the show. At least I'm not visible in the show.
Well, now you know there's another Chromium-based browser you can try out, time permitting. Okay, I'm going to, let's see, I guess to share screen again, I need to do it on this main. Okay, so we're going to go to screen 2, share. And, okay. I'm really liking these multiple desktops, by the way. I just have to remember the keystrokes. So I thank you all for attending. The Central Florida Computer Society main meetings have been primarily in the past for its own members, and the pandemic has opened up so many avenues of internet connections that we are now, well, I won't say worldwide, but I know it's US and Canada and maybe some overseas people. I haven't looked to see who's on today, but it has certainly opened up the world for us. So all of you who registered are in Huey's database for today's session. You will receive a link for today's presentation. I am going to take all of the links that I either used or plan to use in this presentation and come up with a PDF file that will have active links in there. So if you wish to do your own research, you're free to do it. And I would invite you to join us at the Central Florida Computer Science TechSig. If you would like to do that, you can send an email to Stan Wallner, smwallner@gmail.com. If you want to put that in the show notes, Huey, send an email to Stan Wallner and ask to be added to the TechSig. It's the fourth Tuesday of every month at 7 p.m. And we'll be having some little shorter, obviously, continuation of some of what we started today. And I'll come out of this.
And while you're coming out of it, the TechSig is one where it started, we'd all sit around a big table in Denny's and you go from one person to the next, and each one would come up with some kind of a topic of something they discovered for the week or something they tried or something that they need some help with, and just go around the table. Everybody got a turn, and we now are doing it using Zoom. So it can go off in some really wide tangents, but it's still technology. Sometimes it's electronics, sometimes it's some of the technology in flying, and sometimes it's flight simulator, and sometimes it's taking apart pieces of equipment and trying to put it back together again with extra parts left over.
We have a member who's actually building an airplane. He's been building it now for about 9 years. So, okay, folks, I hope I didn't bore you. And I hope it was interesting. You know, all opinions are mine. And obviously there are going to be people with different opinions. I tried to keep it as objective as I can, but I'm sure some of my biases came through, and that's me. So thanks again. I'm going to stop recording. Let's see here.
Well, I thought that